Good morning everyone, I'm Chris and welcome back to another episode of Rift Amps. Right, Tone King updates. So I've given the amp a full service. I did the new input jack, sorted out the reverb knob. I've gone through giving it a service, give everything, check all nuts and bolts, tighten everything up, clean all the pots and switches. It's running on the bench. I have fitted the customer supplied 6 L6s, and we are getting a beautiful sine wave on the oscilloscope. 14.4 volts RMS into 8 ohms puts us at 26 watts, which is exactly where it should be. So I'm really happy with that. The valves are not red plating, so they're really happy. I've checked the bias on them. Voltages all seem to be good. I think I measured 26 volts. They're cathode biased. The only thing that has confused me is the ultralinear pentode switch seems to actually be a pentode triode switch, because when you switch it to ultralinear mode, it runs the screens off the screen nodes. So it connects the screens to the pin 3. It's a normal pentode triode switch. I don't know why they've called it ultralinear, but I don't know. Anyway, it's running great. It sounds great. It sounds really, really good. The only thing I can't do is turn the tremolo off, because the foot switch requires the foot switch. Requires a stereo cable, and I can't find mine. Can't find my any stereo cable in the workshop. So what I had to do was use jump leads just to connect it all up and make sure the channel switching works and that the tremolo switches on and off with the foot switch. But apart from that, it's running great. It sounds fantastic. Absolutely no problem with this. So I'm just giving it a soak test. Customer is on his way to collect, so should be here in about an hour or so. But apart from that, it runs and it sounds great. So I think I'd be really, really happy with it. But yeah, interesting one. But yeah, there you go. Tone King, Sky King. Now, a lot of you, the video that I originally did on this has been very, very popular in terms of, views that this channel gets anyway. And so a couple of things, a couple of questions to answer on it. This one was built. This one is Premier Builders Guild. So this was built before Tone King was sold, and then when the later ones that were manufactured at Boutique Amp Distribution. So this is an earlier model. This is 2013. And in 2016, that's when they started coming out of Boutique Amp Distribution, and they went to a more standard PCB layout on these. So that's that. The Tolex, the green Tolex, remember we talked about that before. It is just sun bleaching. Somebody commented on the channel, the brown is a combination of red and green. And of course, red fades in sunlight, so what you end up with is green. So that makes complete sense. It's not painted. Someone hasn't gone over that with paint. That is just fading. I was just shocked that I've never seen one that bad before, or go that colour, I should say. So apart from that, yeah, look, we're all good. We're running fine. Do you know what? It's an incredibly easy amplifier to work on, especially if you've worked on old radios before. This thing, not an issue at all. It's quite easy to work out where everything is. Didn't even need a schematic. You can just do it all just with some simple circuit tracing and common sense. So for everyone who said it seems overly complicated to service, it's really not. This is arguably a lot easier than a lot of other amplifiers that come in. So yeah. The only thing I would do if it was me is it hasn't got any screen. It's got a grid stopper on pin 1 for the control grid on the output valves, but no screen stopper. So I would argue that this amplifier, if you wanted, especially if you drive this thing, run it at overdrive a lot, I'd argue you might consider putting in even something low value like 470 ohms just to help keep that screen dissipation down. Anyway, apart from that, I've got no issues with sending this one back out the door. It sounds fantastic, really, really happy with it. So we'll call this one done. Okay, a couple of comments about all of the gear that I use to build amplifiers. Things like my snips, my soldering iron, my oscilloscope, my signal generator, all that stuff. So what I'm going to do, in the bottom of this video, I'm going to put links to all the stuff I use. Now, someone asked, why don't I use super fancy soldering irons? Well, the simple answer is, don't need to. You just don't. You don't need a Weller, you don't need a Hacko. Yeah, they're fantastic, yeah, they're great, and they work brilliantly. But the ones I use, I've got 4 of them. 2 digital, 2 analog. That's the displays on the front, and with they're 60-watt irons, temperature-controlled stations, and with a chisel tip, you can build amplifiers no problem. Repair them, it does it all. And when they break, which they never do, but to replace them, it's quite affordable. The wand, as you call it, the wire with the wand, I generally get about 3 years out of them. Full-time professional work. And the tips, I do go through the tips a lot, but that's more of a lead-free solder thing than the tip itself. So yeah, but I've always used these irons. They're great. I think you can still buy them at RS. Probably picks them up at Amazon as well. But they just work great, and they don't bust the bank, which is and as long as they apply a lot of heat really quickly, which is what I want. They're cheap to maintain, and they just work. I can't emphasize that enough, how well they work. So I've got one on every bench here, and they're all set up the same. I set mine to 363 degrees Celsius for the lead-free solder that I use, and it just works. It just does in a super simple soldering. No effort, no struggling, no messing around. They just work, and they rarely break, if at all, which is what you want. Okay, Matamp news. I am finally winning with this amplifier. So just to recap, the main issue I've been having with the Matamp is that I could not get enough bias current running, or cathode current running through the valves to switch them on properly, and we had that awful crossover distortion. And I'd made a couple of observations and measurements and things. I confirmed that the bias supply was working. It gave me a negative voltage range of negative 60 volts all the way up to negative 30. So certainly that seemed to work. We'd found the faulty cap in the bias supply, one of the smoothing caps. So all 3 were replaced. We measured quite a low B+ in the amplifier, but speaking to Matamp themselves, they seemed to confirm that was correct. So why could I not get these 6v6s, which are on my valve tester still test okay? Why could we not get these things biased up properly? So I went through and I checked all of the output board, all of the bias board, even went back and started taking measurements of things around the phase inverter, just in case there was an issue there. But no, all I was able to do was confirm that up until the output valves, the amp is performing as it should do. Nothing wrong with it. So why could we not get the correct amount of current flowing through the output valves? Okay, something doesn't make sense. Now, this is a good diagnostic tool and a good tip for people, because I always like to say this. If something doesn't make sense, it's because of one of 2 things. Number 1 is that you've made an incorrect assumption, or 2 is that you don't have all the information. Because if you do have all the information, of course the issue would make sense, right? So I've either made an incorrect assumption or I don't have all the information. Well, I've got so much information because I've measured this thing 10 times back to front, upside down, inside out, all of it. I've got all the information. So I must have made an incorrect assumption. Okay? And that assumption that I've made, and after speaking with Hayden at Matamp on the phone about this, we both agree that the assumption that we've made was that this amp has always been performing correctly and has now developed a fault. What if this amp has always been faulty from the factory like that and nobody's ever picked it up? Is that a possibility? Well, yes, it could be. So on further inspection, so let's just recap. We've measured the signal flow through the amplifier up until the input grids of the output valves. Absolutely fine. But coming out of the output valves, we can see that crossover distortion. Okay, that means the valves are not switched on. So it's not something further downstream, like the output transformer. We know our bias supply is working, and we know we get a good voltage range on it. So what could it be? Well, maybe, just maybe, this amp wasn't originally designed for 6v6s. Yes, it says 6v6s on the back, but that's just the plate. What if the circuit was actually set up for a different type of valve? Now, Hayden confirmed to me that actually these also came with EL34s. And what if, and there's the high possibility of this amp is designed to bias EL34s. And is that why we can't get the correct bias for 6v6s? Okay, right, so if we look at the bias board on the back, you can see, you've got the adjustment pot here and you've got a tail resistor to ground. Now, it was a 22k resistor. Matamp confirmed that usually for 6v6s, this resistor, 1, 2, 3, 1 for each output valve, should be a 3k3. What? So we fitted I fitted the correct value resistors, and guess what? The bias range has moved to where the valves are happy. I've now got the correct amount of current running through the valves as expected, or as I would want it to be, and our output sine wave, sorry, I'll just turn the light off. No crossover distortion. The output stage of this amplifier is now operating as it should be. What do you think of that, guys? Do you think that this amp was originally built for EL34s, was fitted with 6v6s at the factory, and just sent out the door? And maybe it's always been like this. I think that's what's happened. I genuinely do. Now, okay. Now it's running fine, I can go through and do the rest of the things. In fact, it's been running like this, putting an acceptable amount of wattage out the wall. Output sine wave looks good. It's nice and stable. It's nice and fine. The only thing that I found is that actually these valves, even though they test good, they are quite noisy. So I am going to recommend to the customer that we fit a new set of 6v6s. Apart from that, this amplifier is pretty much done. Just give it a good service and a sort out. So we made the incorrect assumption that this amplifier was always designed for 6v6s. Because that's what it's labelled as, right? We were missing the correct bit of information that this amp was actually built to run EL34s. Hayden at Matamp agrees. He said he would convert it to bias 6v6s because that's what it runs. And so that's what I've done, and it's working. There you go. Bit of a head scratcher, bit of a interesting one, but we're there. Pento triad switch to show you the operation of that. Drops it down. So in full power mode, we're at 14.8, 15 volts into 8 ohms, exactly 28 watts. Drop it down to 7 3/4 volts, which is, oh, that's nice actually. It drops it down to about 7 or 8 watts. That's interesting. That's very cool. But that's all working. This amp has never run right from the factory. Unbelievable. But there you go. So I'm just here populating the PR35 black panel board for that next build. And do you remember in Wednesday's video we talked about making mistakes and how often I make mistakes, and you know, is that a common thing or not, and what do I do about it? Well, I almost made a mistake filming the last segment there. You see, I wasn't concentrating. In this particular position I need a 22 nanofarad capacitor, and I was just prepping a 47 to go in there. Just wasn't thinking straight. So, but there you go. As I said, it's not about making the mistakes, it's about how well you catch them. And I think that's the most important thing, is that you have a process in place. Some might call it quality control, that allows you to spot things that aren't quite right, you know, whether that's a mistake or something that could be done better, you know, a wire route or something, and allows you to fix that. So someone did say, let me just scroll through to the questions about making mistakes, especially with resistor colour bands. And then what he does is, on all of his drawers where he keeps his resistors, rather he actually labels them with the actual value, which is what I do. My resistor storage, everything's labelled with its actual value, so the drawer will say 100k, 10k, you know, 2k7 or whatever, rather than relying on colour bands. Reason we did that is the lad who used to work for me here was actually colourblind, and he really struggled with resistor colour bands, and so all we did, just to accommodate, was just label the drawers with the actual value. It just worked. Well, I've stuck with that ever since. But there you go, that's another little tip for you. So I'm just making progress on this board, and I'm nearly done with it now. I've just got the last, just in the preamp section of this board here. We're just getting these components in now. For some eyelets where you've got multiple leads going in, sometimes it's helpful, this is one of my top tips, and I may have shown you this before, is to just tack solder them into place, and that means just using the tiniest amount of solder, and that will hold it in place. See, I've just done that one, and now that won't move while I put the other component in. While I'm thinking about it, just a little update on the mains transformer for this build. So I've got a batch of them on order from my winder. I've ordered 10 units, but they came back to me this morning with an update saying there are some delays and they're not going to be able to get them to me in the time frame that I need, which of course is no good. So I've gone to our good friends at Modulus and asked him to wind a one-off transformer, special transformer for this build. So that's what he's going to do for me, and that should be with me next week, which I'm actually really quite happy with, because it means I will be able to get this amp out by the end of the month, because the cabinet should be with me next week, and the faceplates are already here, and I'm making good progress on this build. So yeah, good news on that. Okay, here's something a little unusual for the channel, although I've done quite a few of these in the past. This is a valve radio, or more accurately, this is a valve radio receiver that you then plug into the rest of your hi-fi equipment. This particular one is the Heathkit model FM4U. Now what this is an FM only radio receiver. Now, a lot of the Heathkit stuff was actually, they were kits that you would build at home yourself. So this was probably assembled by its original owner, whenever that was. I would assume it's late 60s or early 70s. I can't remember when VHF came in. But yeah, it is a valve unit. It's missing what looks like it's missing the back panel. The mains cable itself is not in great condition. You can see we've got some damage here, we've got some damage here. This might be the original cable for it, but it's not looking good. Anyway, that's the first thing we notice. As we tilt you up and have a look properly, what can we see? It's got mains transformer with a voltage selector tab on top. We've got this is probably the rectifier valve, an EZ80, correct. Looks like the filter can cap has been replaced with, it originally would have been a multi-section cap, and it's been replaced with these single sections in that arrangement. I assume the correct replacement wasn't available at the time, whoever did this. We've got an ECC85. Now that will be the original detector for the unit. Looks like somebody's added, so we've got a aerial in. Looks like we've got the line out there. So it's already been modded. This will probably be an output volume for the line out. We see some of the other valves inside, like the oscillators and things like that. So all the owner wants me to do on this is to take it apart, give it a service, do an alignment on it, and make sure it's good to go. So shall I quickly pull the chassis and we have a look inside? Right, so with the cover removed, we can see more clearly what we've got going on. So this is the, as I said, this is the detector, the first stage. This will be detecting, quite literally, the radio signals that come in. Got our IF stages there and the oscillators that go with them. We can see a couple of replaced components. These won't be original. Looks like there's a Mallory cap down there. So it's already had some service work before. Quite a lot of spiders. The string looks in reasonable shape. So we should be able to move the dial on the front. We flip her up underneath, we can see, oh yeah, I forget. These ones have got the magic iron tube valve. So that will glow. It's got two bars on it that will come together as you get a stronger signal and then pull apart when you don't. So when you're tuning that thing, that should work. So I have to check operation of that. It's quite simple underneath. Look, not a lot going on. PCB design, old school PCB design. Let me get that in focus for you. Somebody's already been in this and done some service work, look. So hopefully we don't need to do much, but that mains cable will need replacing. But yeah, if you guys are interested in radio work and repair and want to see me do a full checkout on this inspection, and we'll do an alignment as well, please comment down below, and if enough people ask for it, I will film it. But yeah, this is a valve radio, FM only, so no medium wave, no short wave, no long wave, FM only. So we should be able to get radio 2 on this. We should be able to get radio 2 on this. What's this valve here? That's an EB Echo Bravo 91 Mallard. Cool. 7-pin. Yeah, haven't been inside one of these for a while, so I'm just remembering what they are. Anyway, Heathkit valve radio. Well, that's it then, guys. Thank you very much for watching once again. So you may have noticed that the videos are starting to be a little bit shorter. What I'm trying to do is to keep them to around 20 minutes in length, because a couple of months ago, the videos were getting longer and longer and longer. And I figured actually rather than one 45 minute video, I'll just do 20 minutes on a Wednesday evening, 20 minutes on a Sunday. And I think that's starting to work out to be a bit more palatable for everyone. So it seems to be working. Please give this video a thumbs up, comments down below. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Our subscriber numbers are increasing and I'm hitting numbers I never thought I'd hit, so thank you so much. If you want to join the channel like these guys have, there's a button below for you to do so. And that just leaves me to say, I'll catch you all at the next one.